Hi, everybody. This is Lee at Fresh Astrology. I'm going to do a short follow-up to the live video that we did last night on how the planets give you money, because I can understand there was some confusion because there's a classical way of doing astrology that you can learn anywhere. Um, there's a lot of free information out there if you want to learn the old-fashioned way to do it. It's a good baseline and foundation. However, I really encourage anybody studying astrology, even if you just want to look at your own chart, to use your own brain and to think for yourself and to go beyond it. And in terms of interpreting a chart, you can think for yourself once you learn the foundation. You can go further with it because you're fully entitled to. Like, there's no one person or group of people out there who own astrology. You can make of it what you want to based on your gifts, and your own insight. In my way of thinking, in terms of how the planets give you money is the example here. In my way of thinking, and the way I go beyond what I learned, is I see the planets, but there are others, more than me out there who believe this, but I strongly believe that the planets in your chart are your gifts, are your strengths. They're where you, like Saturn, that's where you can learn. It's how you learn. It's maybe how you're meant to teach others. Maybe it's how you're supposed to lead. Maybe it's how you're supposed to coach or mentor. It's where your strength is. Saturn is a strength of yours. It's not a curse. And this is where I would differ from a lot of astrologers. Old-timey astrology is like old-timey, hellfire and brimstone religion, practically. It pretty much comes from the same space of be fearful. Be fearful. First and foremost, be fearful. Feel restricted. In Christianity, people are born with original sin, something you can never really get over. You're just born bad. And there's an old way of looking at astrology that's like that. You're born with maybe a bad placement or a bad seed, And I want you to know, in terms of your money and everything else, like, I'm pretty much knocking all that stuff off the shelf for you guys. And I want you to understand that when, like, people who come to my astrology classes know this, I put them on the spot and make them think for themselves. And because they're talented, the people who come through my classes are brilliant thinkers. They're very intuitive. I want them to think for themselves, and I put them on the spot all the time, and it's uncomfortable. And I would, invite you guys, in this classroom, if you want to ask questions of me or say how, you didn't tell me how to read my chart, I invite you to create the astrology, create the way out of the problem, find the solution. The chart is not a curse. The chart is not a bad seed. You are not cursed. You are not a bad seed. Nothing in your chart is bad, quote unquote. It may be challenging. It may be that you have to go through some challenges because that's the way life is for everybody. And no one's excluded from that. And on the surface, someone may look like they don't have challenges, but you really don't know that. You have to know, and astrology charts prove it. You can look at anyone's chart and see where their challenges are and their victories and their strengths and how a person can overcome. So what I did last night in the first part of how the planets, give you money, I was showing you the chart of Louise Hay. And this is a woman who had a very hard life. She had some good things, she had some bad things, but a lot of trauma that not everybody goes through. And I picked her chart for a reason, because this woman overcame what could have been a bad chart. If you just look at it from old-fashioned viewpoints, kind of the hellfire and brimstone astrology that's like hellfire and brimstone Christianity and other kind of extremist religious views, if you want to look at it that way, it's your choice. The way I invite you to look at it is that your chart is not like that. Your chart is an open book. Your chart is like a roadmap of your gifts and your strengths. That's the way I see astrology. And I encourage you, if you want to try to see it that way. And I know it's a different way of seeing it. I think when people come to astrology originally, they may be looking for help. They want something to be given to them, like tomorrow everything will be okay. That's pretty much why everybody, when they're in trouble and they're upset and they're feeling vulnerable, they come to astrology and they basically want the astrologer to say, tomorrow everything will be fine. And then they get pulled into the world of astrology where astrologers say a whole mixture of things, including tomorrow everything will, go to hell in a handbasket. You, by the way, have a bad chart. You, by the way, are cursed. And then you get, as somebody following astrology, you can get sucked into that and think you're doomed and think there are these certain prescriptions for, just suffering. And I'm here to tell you that's just not true. That is not true. Although you can choose to look at it that way. You can choose to suffer. And you can choose to look at Pluto. Let's just say somebody has Pluto in their 8th house of money. Now, if you go to old-fashioned astrology and kind of what's out there and what most people say, it would be some version of, they would focus on, if somebody was in trouble, they would really focus on sex and fetishes and darkness and crime and bankruptcy. And, it's sounding really good, right? Like if you have that placement, there may be some of that in your life. It's true. But Pluto is your gift. Pluto in the 8th house is your gift. It's not a curse, I would offer. Now, somebody could use that Pluto energy that's inside of them and behave as though they were cursed. Somebody could use that Pluto energy inside of them, and through any power they possess, they could misuse that power. It's a choice, though. One person with Pluto in the 8th alongside another person with Pluto in the 8th could have totally different outcomes based on choice, based on listening to the higher side of Pluto or listening to the lower side of Pluto, because Pluto has a high side, which is often overlooked, especially if you're going to read it in certain placements. So Pluto's high side, what is it? Well, there are many, many pieces of it. Anything that you could find as a negative about Pluto, you just really can flip that around and think, what's the positive version of that? But if you're not practiced at it, I can see where it would be challenging at first. But Pluto has many strengths. First of all, this is where you can face your fears. It's where you have the most fears. So somebody with Pluto in the 8th might have a lot of fear around money, but it's also the strength to face your fears around money, and to not only face your fear around money, but conquer your fear around money and dominate. Pluto's where you can dominate. So you can dominate money. You can have an ironclad system, develop an ironclad system for managing your money. Another thing old-fashioned astrology does with the 8th house is it's all about marriage. What if you never get married? What about, in modern times, a lot of people don't get married, or they keep separate bank accounts and separate, they manage their money separately, completely separately. And so it no longer holds. Just the way, old-timey astrology didn't consider the internet, and we now do. We have to think about how society is now and what's possible for you. And I speak a lot to women, like I counsel a lot of women. For a woman with 8th house Pluto, who, is a strong in her career, and makes a lot of money, never gets married, that Pluto in her 8th is not about her partner. So what is it about? I would say if the woman's, becoming stronger financially, that's Pluto. That's her dominating that financial field. That's her becoming her own partner in terms of her money. And that's a place where a woman can really gather strength. And, you can read it all kinds of ways in terms of what she could do to get the money. Always, you could just totally focus on the tiny sliver of negative, horrible stuff that somebody could do with Pluto to earn money. There's prostitution, there's, the mafia. You could look at that only if you chose to, because that's pretty much, what you find out there. But you could also look at things like writing detective stories. Maybe she becomes a movie director and does a lot of thrillers. Maybe she, gets onto the Supreme Court and deals with, high crimes. So, or determines, laws that, about high crime. What is a crime or what isn't a crime? So, I guess what I want you to take away is not how can you read your chart in a classical sense, because I got a lot of questions about last night, as though I hadn't told you how to read your chart. And I want you to know that this isn't about how to look at your chart in a classical sense. This is about kind of smashing the old way of doing it and doing it in a completely new way. So when you look at your chart, the message I wanted all of you to get is the planets are giving you a roadmap to get more money, to be able to find resources for yourself. There's a roadmap there it's like a treasure map that leads you. In the case of money, I was just using the instance of money to show you something that people are usually concerned about. People are concerned about money. So I was showing you there's a roadmap in your chart that shows you where and how to get money, but there's no real prescription here. You have to think for yourself. So if you're looking at your chart and you feel like I didn't connect all the dots for you, think of the meanings of maybe the zodiac sign that governs the money houses. That's just a place to start. Of course, astrology is very complex, but just as a starting point, you can look at your money houses, the 2nd and the 8th, and look at the zodiac signs that govern. You can look at any planetary placements there when you were born and also now, especially if there's a slower moving planet in there now. It's slowing down in there to do something for you, to give you the tool. So if you have Uranus slowing down, slower than, say, the sun, slower than, say, the moon, going through for about 7 years through a money house, what are the tools of Uranus that you could borrow? Because that energy is flowing through you. It's not flowing through your chart out on a piece of paper somewhere or in a piece of software somewhere. Uranus is flowing through you. We can't identify where it is in the body, but let's just say it's in your elbow. I want you to understand that Uranus is literally a part of you. Like, that's how astrology, why would a planet way out there? But the energy is big from, the planets, and energy can move long distances very quickly, almost instantaneously. Energy works differently than the way humans work. And so sometimes it's hard to picture, but the energy from Uranus is inside of you. That's why people can kind of live their astrology without even knowing about astrology. But if you know that Uranus is coming through a money house, it's literally an energy that's given to you in your body, in your mind, in your gut instincts, and gives you kind of the skills of Uranus. How could you use that to overcome any perceived obstacles in your life around money? You can think about this for yourself. I really encourage you, almost as an assignment, like, if people are in my astrology classes, I make them do a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of thinking, because that's my whole thing about astrology, is that you are in charge of it. It's not for me to tell you what's going to happen to you or what you're like. You get to decide. You get to decide how to use Pluto or Uranus or Saturn. And I know that's maybe not popular. Not everybody's going to like that. Not everybody's going to believe that, but that's what I believe. And so the point of, how the planets give you money, part one, and this follow-up is to explain that you are in the driver's seat. I don't need to tell you how to read your chart. You can, if you know that you can look at the planets and think about what strengths they carry, not what their detriment is and all the trash from old astrology. If you can think about what are the strengths, like if Saturn's flowing through me right now in terms of how I govern my money in the 8th house, maybe, what kind of strength does that give me? Well, it gives you an incredible ability to learn quickly and to apply what you learn. It gives you an amazing ability to apply structure to your finances so that you could set up a 401k or a 529 or whatever else, or invest in real estate. It gives you incredible abilities to master and learn about money. It's a big strength. Now you could, if you wanted to, it's your choice. I prefer the way I just said, but if you want to, you can say Saturn brings restriction. Saturn brings restriction. Okay, so TLL, hi there. I'd be happy to do the work, but not sure what to do. Can you give us, please, the tools on how to take charge of the planets? Yes. I'm so glad you asked. I'm really glad you asked these questions because I think it's probably something everybody was wondering, people who did watch. And so you're welcome. So, and I know it's that feeling, there's the feeling one has when you look at astrology this way of, I don't know what to do. If somebody doesn't tell me what to do, then I don't know what to do. But I'm telling you, you do. You do know what to do. Because you can maybe learn best from your own chart because you know what it feels like to be living in your chart. And then it would be good to try to find, and there's software out there where you can find like a famous person or people who share like the next, famous person who shares your chart closest, I forget who does that. I don't know if it's Astro Theme, but you can Google, famous people with his birthday or whatever, and try to find somebody you know something about or, read about them. And if they got further than you in terms of their career or making money or, whatever it is, or in love, and their chart's very close to you, think about, like how did they use, like if they had Saturn in a similar placement to you, how might they have used that Saturn differently? If you want examples, it's sometimes good to do that comparison, which is why I showed you Louise Hay's chart, because she was a woman who could have just gone into obscurity and poverty in her, what was considered older age. But she did the opposite of that, just seemingly out of nowhere, although it wasn't really out of nowhere. She, just built a kingdom out of her publishing house and did very well and then really impacted people's lives. So the tool is, like, if you're speaking in terms of tool, see, like Love Tribe or Oprah Winfrey, there you go. That's such a great example. You can look at her strengths. She shares so much about her life and the struggles she's overcome and the tools she's used. And so the tools start to merge. And this is why I'm merging my coaching and astrology more. The tools become TLL. The tools become almost coaching tools. So you take the meaning of the planet, or maybe the zodiac sign, or maybe the house, and you think, you understand that. You understand that it's Pluto, and you understand something about Pluto. You understand something about the 8th house, and then you step back from that, and the tool it's a coaching tool. So if I were to write it like in our courses, the tools are like exercises that you run through yourself, through your mind, or maybe through, checking in with your gut. So you think about, let's take Pluto in the 8th house. If you're like, well, what tool do I use to make that work for me or to read that? You step back from your chart and you ask yourself, what do I really want? Not what's happened to me in the past, not what was my sad story or my current sad story. You take a big breath, or 3 or more if you need to, and you try to let your mind settle. Your mind is never totally empty. That's a lot of people think that's how you have to meditate, but you just let your thoughts settle so that you're just paying attention to your breathing, and ask yourself, what do I want? I know what my current situation is, and it's not what I want. Let's just say that it's not what you want. So Pluto in the 8th house, I'll tell you what I would want. I don't have Pluto in the 8th house, but here's what I would want. I would want to have mastery over, I would want to dominate my finances. I would want to understand where every penny was in its investment. I would want to master the range of investment opportunities, no matter how. And I have to tell you, like back in my early 20s, I was somehow given the opportunity to learn about investing. Somebody gave me a book, and I started investing with very small amounts, very, very small. My salary was laughable. I had almost no money left over after I paid for rent and other, necessities, but with very small amounts, like $5, $10, really tiny. I not only pulled myself out of debt, but I started, savings. And then suddenly it was like, I totally turned things around. It's so doable. So I don't want anybody to tell themselves, as I talk about this Pluto and the 8th stuff, like, well, that's all well and good for her to say because she's never been in my position. She's never had my hardship, which that's you totally copping out and being a scaredy cat to actually try this tool. So I'm going to repeat it one more time. So the tool is you take a step back from your chart, take a few breaths, understand the power is inside of you, and ask yourself, what do I want? There's Pluto sitting in my 8th house, or whatever your situation is. Maybe it's an empty 8th house. That gives you a lot of opportunity actually to have nothing there. And then you'd look to the zodiac sign maybe. And but we're just going to use this Pluto just to stick with one example. So what I would want is I would want to dominate my finances. I would want to be the lord of the underworld in terms of my finances, in the sense that I was the master of my domain. And I might think if I thought, well, I want to be a writer, because that's one of the things I like to do. I would think, well, if I want to write and I've got Pluto sitting in there, I really should think about writing something like a thriller or a detective, novel or a detective series or something dark, cover something a little darker that's a little more Pluto, or if I, as a coach, if I wanted to use the Pluto, I could go, do shadow work or something, and really focus my coaching on shadow work. That's how you dominate that Pluto, and you use its strengths and helping people. And when you do it that way, you totally use Pluto to be a criminal. You could just be like, well, I think the only thing I have left is to be a criminal and steal money. You could do that. But if you don't, most people don't want to do that. They'd rather choose an option that felt good and didn't feel scary and put them in at risk of going to jail. There are a lot of fun ways you could use Pluto to follow your strengths. And with Pluto there, it's going to give you some interest in that area of crime, maybe detective stories or shadow work. It will give you that interest. So that right there is a tool. And to be able to step back and think, what do I want to do with that Pluto? I know what it's felt like it's done to me before, or maybe what I've done with it before. But if I'm not totally happy or content or satisfied or at peace with what's going on with my major financial picture or my career maybe, or my ability to get paid for my work, then what do I want? And then using the tools of Pluto, you can solve that problem. It's almost like math, although not exactly. It isn't math, but it's almost like math. You can figure it out and kind of deduce how maybe you might work your way out. And it puts a lot of the onus on the person, the individual with the chart. So if you're an astrologer and you're helping someone, Love Triber has Pluto, Virgo, second house. I share that too, right? So, that's actually very powerful. I don't know if you experience that way, but start thinking about it the way I'm talking about it. But I have Pluto and Virgo in the second as well. So totally get what that's like. It gives you a lot of power, actually, to earn. And so let's go back to the person with Pluto in the 8th, because I want to stick with that example. But I did want to, I just wanted you to know I could see that. So Pluto in the 8th, you really choose your path with that. And there are lots of opportunities to really go down a downward spiral, but that's always the person's choice. It's never Pluto pulling the strings and making you do it. It's not a curse. It's only a curse if a person chooses to be cursed. And if early in life it feels more like a curse, it's really just learning to master that energy. Now that I've learned how not to use Pluto early in my life, how do I now use it? How can I get on top of this situation? Pluto is always also very cyclical, like everything comes in good time. There's an element of timing, like being in the right time, right place. And that's a gift that you get. And if you understand also that you have that gift, that you could be in the right time and right place with an investment, in this case, in the 8th house, or to get a loan or something, then use that. Know that you have that power and think, if I think of my larger financial picture, what if I just moved what I think is my reality out of the way? What would I like it to be if I could totally build it from scratch? And get that vision in your mind, and then think, okay, I have the tools of Pluto here and whatever zodiac sign that's there, and I have the tools of the 8th house. So if I write out what the strengths of Pluto, the strengths of that zodiac sign, what I also feel like doing, what I think my strengths are, then you kind of start to get a picture. And you can totally figure this stuff out. So I just wanted to jump back on, because I realize the tool, when we talk in terms of astrology, we don't normally think the tool is us and our decision making. We don't think that we are a tool. We don't think our brain is a tool or our heart is a tool. We think that we're kind of forced into this prison of our chart, and that it's more like escaping prison or something. And it's not really. You can just scratch that and try to breathe your way out, take a step back from your chart, and realize that the chart's a representation of what's inside of you, that you are they use in astrology the names of the old Greek and Roman gods. I guess mostly they're the Roman names, right? But so that uses this idea of gods and godlike powers. And there's a lot of truth there, that you have God-given powers and God-like powers in the sense that you are very powerful. And when we're born, we know that as babies, and life tends to strip that concept right away and cover it up. And we get told in a whole variety of ways as we grow up that we're not powerful. We don't have those powers. And we're not supposed to have those powers, furthermore. And what I'm saying is, when you go back into your chart, understand that you have the power. You have the Saturn. You have the Pluto inside of you. You're the God. You're the Saturn. I mean, literally Saturn, the God Saturn. You're the God Pluto. If you want to think of it like a God, you don't have to, but you could just think of it like an energy that you possess, or a strength that you possess, or a genetic trait that you possess, however you're comfortable. Some people hate the word God, but it's all like a metaphor. So when I say, Saturn the god, I'm thinking of it metaphorically, but it is that powerful. It's a power you possess. So TLL says, with Pluto in my 8th house, I was always great in dealing with money. Yeah, see? However, I want now to get more money for my work and not dealing with small amounts anymore. Okay, so what you really want is now you want to go bigger. You want to elevate your game. So with Pluto, first of all, you've got to realize you have the power, that nothing is holding you back. And I know that's sometimes hard for people, because it's like, yeah, but the reality is, and you got to scrap that and just know that with Pluto in the 8th, you actually have the power to get more. And it probably involves facing your fears. So when I counsel people, especially in coaching, the biggest thing in the way of just about everybody is their latent fears. And so with Pluto, there's definitely fear there, but it's the power you have is to face your fear and move through the fear. So you're not going to eliminate your fears, but you'll be able to move through. And without going into a whole personal reading, I can't tell you exactly, would have to get very granular here, but you can, use a pen. I have so many pads of paper and pens all over the place. They get in the way of everything. And fear. Okay, so it's the fear. So write a list of all the things you're scared about in terms of taking your game, like up-leveling your income, all the fears and the belief systems you have. Like a typical one would be like, it's too late for me. I don't have enough skill. I don't have a degree. I'm too old. I just don't have what it takes. Just some basic, like, I'm less than, or, the I can't story. So write it all down and flip it on its ear, because with Pluto, you can move through those fears. And I was talking about Louise Hay last night for a reason too. The way she got through and made her way to the top is she literally flipped every negative thought into its positive, and she came up with her own affirmation to move her through all her myriad and layers of fear. So go get a Louise. Like, I'm just doing a big plug for Louise Hay right now. I mean, at Camille, the people on the video last night with me were my business partners. We have a mindset course. You're welcome to go take that. I think it's, oh, I forget the price. Sorry, Mimi and Carolyn handle the pricing more than I do, but it's not expensive. It's not an expensive course, and it teaches you mindset tools to help you flip things around. So you're welcome to go do that, or just go buy a Louise Hay card deck, or go buy one of her books so you really get what she's all about. That's how you do it. So I'm going to have to stop for now. But I wanted to follow up because I could see people were kind of perplexed and feeling like they just were left without what they wanted from that. So I wanted to give you a little more, but I do still put the burden on you to use this, oh wait, let's see. TLO says, I'm innovative and very successful person and very powerful. Yay, you. People tried to smash my entire career, but I kept going. Yay, you. But you're exhausted. Yes. And need what I deserve now. Good. Okay. So let's take I am exhausted and the I deserve. Okay. Louise Hay has power thoughts, and she works with thoughts like that in her book. And then also in our course, we would teach you how, but just the quick, for everybody, I think most people out there could relate to being exhausted, having to work for your income and then being exhausted and feeling like I just can't get past this exhaustion. It would be, wait, I have her deck right here. I use this when I'm working with people. Let's see if she's got one. It's more like, well, I don't know if I can quickly find one, but it would be more like you would think, I I have all the energy I need. Life flows through me, energy flows through me. I have an endless resource of energy. And so you would repeat every time you start to feel exhausted and have the thought, I'm exhausted, you would catch that, like, okay, there I go again. I'm believing that I'm exhausted and I'm repeating this mantra that I'm exhausted. So you flip it up and just say to yourself, I have all the energy I need. And it might be that when you say that to yourself, you start to take care of yourself a little. Maybe you go sleep, get an extra hour of sleep. You know, you start to behave differently when you believe differently. So it's not that the words energy flows through me right in that moment change you. But when you believe that thought, I have all the energy I need, you behave differently when you think differently. It's just a very simple, the cognitive behavioral concept. And this concept goes way back into philosophy. It's really not a new thing. When you believe differently, you behave differently. It's very basic. It's not woo woo at all. But it can create miracles in your life because that's how you can change your life. So just work with maybe that I'm exhausted thing because that's like it starts to become a belief that I'm too, because I know that feeling very well. I'm too tired to do more. I can't do more because I'm so exhausted. It starts to be a negative affirmation that keeps you stuck. So for all of you, you do the same thing TLL's doing here. Write down all the crap that's in your head about Saturn in your second or Pluto in your eighth, or just how you feel about what you really want. Like when you think about what you really want, all this garbage of thoughts that start to come in and tell you you can't have it, write it all down, create a better thought because you'll start to behave differently when you have a better thought. You'll behave in a better way that starts to move you more toward what you really want. All right, guys. Mwah. Bye.